Okay, so hopefully we are live. Hello, welcome. You are joined today by myself, Lucy Gilmore, career and job search coach. And today I am going to be joined by James Fowl, recruiter at Huxley Morton. Today we wanted to cover, I guess, one of the most common questions and problems that I see job seekers face, which is they're applying for hundreds of jobs, but they're just not getting anywhere. You know, they're not getting invited in for interview. Their applications are just not going anywhere. So today I thought we'd get James on, who, as I said, is a recruiter, to have a look at some resumes and pit them against job descriptions so we can highlight what it is recruiters and hiring managers are looking for, so that you can maybe reflect on your own applications and why you may have not been successful. So we've had some volunteers today that have shared their resume and jobs that they have applied for but not been successful, so we can highlight, you know, maybe where they could have improved their resume maybe, or, you know, just why they probably weren't selected. So we will get started. Of course, this is whilst we're talking, if you do have any questions, feel free to drop a note in the comments, so that, and I'll do my best to manage the comments whilst we're speaking. And also we'll be sharing, as I said, some things that you can do to improve your resume. So let's get started. So I'm going to share a job description of something that one of our kind followers, thank you, Siva, thank you, I can see you there, sent in. So let me just find that. So we've got, hopefully you are going to be able to see that. Can you see that okay? Actually, sorry, I've just realised, actually, let's start, probably best to start with the job description rather than the resume. So let's just have a look. One moment while I just hit share and select the document. Here we are. So this, hopefully you can see that okay. So this, James, was a candidate who applied for a CRA job with PPD, but this was an example that you brought to the table. So do you want to share a little bit more about this?
Okay, yeah, sure. I remember this one because I was somewhat blown away by the comments. So I had someone reach out to me. It was only recently, and they said, James, I'm looking for some support. I keep applying for jobs, feel like I meet all the requirements, and I'm just never hearing back. I said, okay, fine. Do you want to shoot me over a quick overview as to an example of what you've applied for, where you meet the requirements? Because if it's CRA gigs that you're looking for, I may well be able to help. So this was the requirement. And this individual told me that they felt like they met like 70 to 80% of the requirements. And then I asked them to highlight those. So I can see it on the screen, the highlights where it kind of says they're, you know, or they've ticked almost where they felt they met the requirements. So as you can see, there's, you know, good oral and written communication skills. There is good interpersonal skills. There's ability to maintain a customer focus. There's good organizational skills. And I turned around to them and said, fine, I would expect 99% of applicants to have all of those skills. I don't necessarily see those as hard requirements there. I then asked whether they've actually got any CRA or monitoring experience, and they said no. And I guess this is where I think
should we have a look at the resume in that they sent, and maybe, you know, our viewers can also see where they may or may not have hit
that would be useful if you can pull that up and remind me of it.
Let me pull that up so that we can all have a look at that. So it was, one moment, it's disappeared off my screen.
While you're looking for that, I can see, is it Muna? I know you've said in the comments here, I'd like to send you my resume to have your opinion. We probably don't really have time to go through additional resumes right here and now, but if there's any general questions, feel free to put them in the chat and we can perhaps answer collectively to put you on as a whole, because I think we've currently got 50 or 60 viewers here. Yes, Lucy, back to you, or do you want me to cover this, because this was the resume?
Yeah, well, I mean, this was the resume that was sent, and obviously we've redacted their personal information, removing all their contact details. But yeah, I mean, wow, it's not really much to go on in terms.
That was my thought. So yeah, this individual told me that they had applied for that job with PPD and they met 80% of the requirements, was the exact words and messaging that they said to me. As highlighted on that last piece where we were looking at the job description, all of those, what she deemed as requirements, were kind of just soft skills, which, as I said, I would expect people to have, being polite, courteous, being able to work in the team. Look, it's what I would expect if I were going to be hiring you. I think the main requirement there was must have 2 years monitoring experience. When I opened up the CV, I looked at this and thought, okay, there's actually no previous experience whatsoever. All there is a few skills. So granted, this individual may well, I guess, be all of those things: organized, well-mannered, able to work in teams. But what can I tell from this resume? Bearing in mind that job probably had hundreds of applicants. I just said, look, I would reject you in 2 seconds. I don't need to even look any further because you haven't got any previous CRA or monitoring experience. Like that'd be it, like instant rejection. So I was almost a bit miffed as to why she felt that sending hundreds of these applications and getting instant rejections was strange, because if that's what you're classing as meeting 80% of the requirements, it's not what I would class as it. There's probably only one requirement there and she didn't meet it. So it was a bit of a brutal thing, but I think the analogy I used with her was that if you were hiring a brain surgeon to conduct life critical surgery on yourself, would you consider someone that is, interpersonal, can work in a team, organized? You'd probably expect that from a brain surgeon. But if they hadn't got any previous brain surgery experience, I don't think that you'd be letting them near you to operate. So same thing applies here. You just got to be brutal. And that was my assessment on that. It would have taken me 2 seconds to rule that one out, Lucy.
And I would definitely recommend that candidate maybe goes and downloads, pop onto my profile after this and download my resume template, as that might help, because I do feel that, that resume, generally the layout was pretty poor. So they could definitely benefit that. And anyone that's listening, feel free to jump on my profile at the end of this. There's a link in my bio where you can access resume templates and other resources for free. So make sure you check that out. So next, James, there was
I can see a comment here before we move on. There's a LinkedIn user who just says, look, what if we meet 85% of the hard skills for a job but have a large career gap? Look, if you meet 85% of the hard skills and you actually do, you don't just, it's well worth applying, and you can always try to explain the career gap during the interview, but be prepared to explain it, because if it were me and you hadn't done something for 10 years, I'd kind of be like, okay, how fresh is all this knowledge? Like you may have been there and done it, but could you do it tomorrow and be up to speed as quick as someone who was doing it last week? So that, as a recruiter, again, would I mark you down against someone who had more recent experience? Probably. And that's the harsh reality, but I would still apply it and look to maybe try and make yourself stand out by doing something unique in order to get yourself in front of the hiring team.
And so let's move on to the senior CRA. Now, hopefully everyone can see this again.
I think there was a couple of comments maybe zooming in. So
it's not always the best way to do this, because I understand it's tricky to see, especially if you're on a mobile device, to see the text. But we'll kind of highlight to you, I guess, what we would class, or James would class, as the key requirements. So this one was looking for an experienced CRA.
So this was one of my recent requirements, and I think it was like 600 plus applicants for this. So I had the luxury to be a bit picky, but the main criteria I've highlighted for this one in yellow. So a minimum of 2 years on-site clinical monitoring experience, strong oncology therapeutic background. Ideally, my client wanted 2 years of that as well, and can demonstrate previous experience in the pharma, biotech, or CRO industry. So we're not just talking healthcare. It was quite specific that they wanted someone who had worked for a sponsor company or for a CRO. We're not, not vendors, not labs, not sites. It was all very, very specific.
Yeah.
Hence why these things are highlighted. So I think sometimes it's a case of being brutal with yourself and be like, do I meet that requirement, or am I borderline? I typically suggest for people to use almost a traffic light system, go through the JD and just say red, no, I don't do it. Amber, I kind of am there. Or green, if bang on, I have done it. And if it's looking more red and amber than green, chances are slim.
Yeah. And I think that's the thing, isn't it? It's being honest with yourself and looking at those requirements and focusing on the hard requirements, the minimum years of experience. If they say it's a minimum years, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, then realistically, I, especially in this market today, I would say don't even bother applying if you don't meet that, because, the market is busy at the moment. So there will be people that have the experience that they are looking for. So, when people say, oh, I meet 80% of the requirements, and they're basing it on the fact that they're an excellent team player, you're only really setting yourself up for disappointment. So it's about really kind of being honest with yourself and being self-critical, I guess.
Correct. And I can see a comment here. It's a relevant one to this. If a person has 1.5 years CRA experience, but the company JD says 2 years, do you think it is worthwhile applying for it? Yes, I do. But just be mindful, like, they're asking for 2 years. So if you couldn't complain if they auto reject you or immediately reject you. I would probably pick up the phone to someone to find out how good that 1.5 years experience is, because you could be amazing after a year, you could be amazing after 18 months, and you could be better than someone who's been a CRA for 10 years. Not all experience is equal, but if I was just looking at a bit of paper, I'm not going to get that. So I'd probably, if I had the options, and on this occasion I had 600 applications, you decide yourself whether I would have had the options or not. So hopefully, Ashwara, that answers that one for you.
Yeah, and I will just get the resume. Oh, wow. It's a unique one. So this was the resume that had one of the resumes that had applied to the position. So yeah, I'm not.
You definitely need to zoom in on this. I remember trying to read it with a magnifying glass even when I got it.
For starters, the font is extremely small, and then it has a random quote at the top, which again, don't do things like that. That's wasting valuable real estate. You want your resume to be about you, not some random quote that someone's stated. As well, this person's got kind of work experience, but has opened their resume with their formal education. Now, unless you're starting out in your career and that's all you've got, I would say always have your education at the bottom of your resume. You really want to start your resume with kind of a professional summary, and that really should be bullet points based on the job description of where you meet the criteria. So yeah, if she really wanted to stand up for the job, she should have highlighted her years of experience, as a CRA, how many years experience as a CRA, what phases she's worked on, what, I think, was it an oncology study, has she got experience in oncology, what therapeutic areas has she covered, things like that, milestones that she's met, any metrics that she's met, all in that kind of top part to really make the reader want to read on and think, you actually do meet these requirements. Let me just read through to check. She's then gone on to
current job title as well. Liz.
Yeah.
It's like she just had her name and contact information and then a random quote. And I looked at it and just thought, okay, what do you do? Like, as I said, I had 600 applications here. I'm looking, and I know it sounds harsh, I'm looking immediately to just rule people out, because I can only one person's going to get the job. I've got 600 options here.
Mm.
As soon as I see something I don't like, I'm like, okay, done, next.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, it can be that brutal.
It literally 6 seconds, isn't it? I think it's the average that recruiters spend.
I can do most in 2.
There you go. So you really want that key critical information. So already we have to scroll a little bit to see, you know, her most relevant experience. She's also got kind of like I guess that's probably a table in the background. Again, I would say avoid
soft skills. Again, like I'd expect someone to have ICH GCP experience. Like I'm looking for someone who's been a CRA for 3 or 4 years. If you haven't got, like, you would have that by default. Like, don't clutter the top of your resume. I was almost like frustrated. I was like, oh, what is going on here?
And then obviously moving down, she's kind of got summary of her experience. It could be probably tidied up a little bit and more well written. What was the kind of, and was there anything else that would have? I
think for me on this one as well, I actually picked up the phone to this person to give, you know, I give people the benefit of the doubt, and just to let you all know, recruiters do review resumes. It's not just the ATS that auto rejects you. We see them. As I said, it normally takes 2 seconds to reject most people. On this one, I gave them the benefit of doubt because they have enough CRA experience, and I wanted to find out if there was something more substantial there, if the individual was incredible, etc. A couple of things that stood out to me, and I wanted to clarify here, Lucy, were like there's a lot of short stints. Now, on some of them, she's noted
it was contract, though.
It was contract, no problem. But others, it's not noted. Now, if it's not noted, my immediate thing is, why was it so short? And also, the date is to April 2023. In my mind, as human beings, we're all wired to think about the negative. That's why we worry. That's why anxiety kicks in. And I looked at it, I was like, April? What have you been doing since April then? Why hasn't somebody hired you? Top CRAs are in demand. But again, I'll pick up the phone and I'll find out. I asked asking a few questions and said, look, I would need you to help me on this, to explain these gaps, explain the short periods, explain why we haven't been hired since April. And if it was all feasible, I can work with that. I'm happy to back people if they're incredible. But it turned out that this individual didn't want to help me, or said that they would on the phone and then ghosted me. And I've never heard from them ever since. So it's kind of, you need to get your resume in shape, is what I say, because we're busy and don't have loads of time to review this stuff. This person, I gave the benefit of the doubt to give them a shot. And then again, they didn't take anything of it. And just quickly, while I'm on this, I can see a comment from Jasmine here saying that you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. Granted, but do you want to take a shot knowing that it's just going to get batted right back at you? That can take a big impact on your self-esteem. And as much as easy apply does make it too easy to apply for everything, don't fall into that trap.
We were, if the requirements are too broad, or you're not, it becomes a lottery, doesn't it? If you just hit in apply, again, you're wasting your time. You really want to kind of hone in on those requirements that you really meet the requirements for, certainly 80 to 90% of. And yes, Jasmine, the market is flooded at the moment, and I think that's kind of why we wanted to jump on and highlight that, presenting resumes like this and the ones that we're sharing, that's why you have to make yourself stand out from the crowd, because there is so many people on the market. And the whole thing with experience, if it's looking for 5 years experience and you only have 2, the chances are there's going to be people with 5+ years experience, because as you've stated, the market is flooded at the moment. So you really do have to go above and beyond, more so than probably ever, to make yourself stand out from the crowd. And that's kind of why we wanted to jump on today and highlight kind of the where people may be falling down, but also, that's what I guess my program, the Career Growth Accelerator, is all about. It's helping candidates stand out in this extremely crowded market at the moment. But let's move on and talk about our next one. I think the next one,
because these are all examples, by the way, of people that have highlighted to us that they feel like they meet all of the criteria and have no idea why they're not hearing back. And I think that's kind of what, Lucy asked for my involvement, to say why I wouldn't necessarily accept them.
And this next one's a little bit unique because as kind of a recruiter, you probably wouldn't necessarily be working with graduate interns, and even myself, most of my clients tend to be kind of that mid to senior, stage in their career. But, there are so many people that are completing their studies in clinical research, looking to get in, looking to start internships, or looking for those entry level positions. So I thought it'd be good to just look at this one. So in terms of the requirements, obviously you get the whole blurb above of kind of what you'll be doing, but then the basic qualifications. So the candidate needs to be 18 years old, minimum GPA of 2.8, eligible to work in the US without work authorization or sponsorship now or in the future. So again, that's probably quite a critical part. What other ones, James, would you say are, look, they've got preferred qualifications, so probably always jump to those as well, enrolled in a master's or a doctoral program?
That looks like it to me. Clearly this is an entry-level job. It wouldn't be my bag. This is, by the looks of things, it is so broad. Like applying to this is like buying a lottery ticket, because how many people in the US are going to have that GPA? How many people are going to be above 18? And I guess how many people will be involved in or enrolled in masters or doctorate program? It's pretty broad, isn't it? So this is one where I guess, as grads or as students, you don't really have any experience to fall back on, and the market is going to be competitive. So it's a difficult one. Because it's not overly focused, and it's a bit of not the best advert. I'm sure that they got absolutely swamped.
Well, let's have a look at the resume.
You might need to zoom in on that. I can't necessarily see it too well.
I'm just going to delete that. Right, so she had her details at the top there. Can you see that okay? Let me just...
If you could zoom in a bit, so that I can see that on my screen.
Oh, too much.
Okay, so they've got they're doing
GPA 3.8, so she ticks that box. And where is she? Oh, she's studying a master's in regulatory affairs, so she ticks that box. Right, so that's in Boston, but originally it looks like she may be from India. So depending on, I guess, her sponsorship status, or, whether she's now, moved to the States and got a green card, I guess that may be one of the reasons why she was rejected.
That would maybe be one of my concerns. Just to speak completely open, normally when it's a gig in the US, and I'm not talking about graduate positions here, I'm talking about kind of the positions I work on, even if it's remote, fully remote, as they often put, they want people in the US, and they don't really want to mess around with sponsorship if they don't have to, because it's an added bit of administration. And if you don't, we're all the same, right? If you don't have to do a bit of work and you can get the same result, everyone's going to pick that option. So a lot of my clients will specifically say, look, we don't want people that need sponsorship. Whether they're right or wrong to do that is, kind of not necessarily my concern as an agency recruiter. I need to fit their brief. But if they've got the options, then you can perhaps see why they would go with the path of least resistance. It's just human nature, I guess.
And would you recommend, I guess, that this candidate maybe should make it clear on their resume, if that's the requirement, that they have, the right visa in place to...
Probably, just because, again, that again, recruiters are always looking at ways to rule people out to an extent, because they get so many people, and we want to whittle it down. So I would just highlight that, eligibility to work in there. It could be an absolute given, just because someone has initial education overseas, doesn't necessarily matter. They could be a full US citizen, perfect. But I would, if that is the case, particularly at the moment, or particularly on something like this where it's a lottery and there's going to be so many applicants, like spell it out. So that it, like, even a 6-year-old could see it, is what I would say. Because, as I say, as recruiters, I'll admit it, we're busy. We're also lazy to an extent. If there's something that we can quickly move on and find someone who has done it, we'll take that option. Yeah. And in reality, that's what everyone's like.
I always refer it to, don't expect them to read in between the lines, because sometimes they don't even read the lines. With the Control F, they're just going to search your CV or resume for keywords on occasion. So you want to make sure that it's as easy to see that you fit the qualifications as possible.
So fair enough to in that situation, there was nothing overly wrong with the application. It's
I think the only thing was that
such a number in the system there, and it's a lottery. And if you are dead set that is a position that you want, then you need to try something other than just sending your resume.
Yeah. And I think that brings us on to Zach's comment here. Would you recommend reaching out to recruiters before applying for job postings, or would this not really make a difference? Now, I know in my program, I go quite in depth into who you should be reaching out to when applying for positions to get the best results. And I would definitely say that person, could have made themselves stand out by maybe approaching the place that had that internship directly, and finding the person in charge of that and maybe approaching them directly to really highlight their skills, rather than just going through the main kind of easy apply option. What would you say on that, James?
On something like that, I guess at graduate level one, but I guess it goes in general, soft skills that people often put in their summaries, proactive go-getter or something like that, means nothing. But a good way to show that is work out who the person hiring would be, go and find them, source their details from somewhere, and then put together a compelling message that speaks to what problem they have and present yourself as a solution. That, you can't just list soft skills, you've got to show them. So that, could definitely be something, certainly in that scenario, that grads can do to stand out. But that goes across the board as well, Zach, is to focusing on your comment there.
Perfect. Let's move on to another position. I think this brings us on to our last one. I'm just conscious on time. So we've got probably about another 15-20 minutes left, guys. So if you have any more comments or questions that you'd like to cover while we're on, please do pick our brains.
While you're pulling that one out, I can see a comment here from Jasmine just saying about those keywords are also what larger systems use, XPPD, if that's example PPD. There's something else, that's valid self-starter. In terms of, listing like systems, I don't know whether, Jasmine, this is answering your question, but if you have worked with particular systems and tools, they are worth mentioning, but not just as a blanket, here's my experience, for us to work out. Intertwine that into your roles and your responsibilities. Worked as a CRA for X CRO using this system, and this system to achieve Y. Again, spell it out and get those in there. And as a recruiter, if it were a particular ETMF or something like that, I'd put in Control F and I'd search for the particular system. And if that was in the resume, I could see it at job number 1, at job number 2, and at job number 3. I'd be like, okay, I'm comfortable that this person knows what they're doing with that system. So a little bit there. I'll let you get back now that you've found this.
I certainly, just before we move on to that, James, recommend that especially those working in clinical research, and I guess it goes to any industry that you work in, you all know kind of the systems that you use, you know, and the certain nuances within your sector that would really make you stand out. So for example, in clinical research, it's kind of the positions that you've held, it's the therapeutic areas, it's the phases that you've worked on, it's the systems that you've used, the EDC systems, and all of those things. Your day-to-day activities, you know, if you were a CRO, for example, you know, how many sites did you manage? Where did you travel? You know, how much time did you spend traveling? All of these little things that you probably think, well, that's just the day job, I don't need to mention it. They all add up to showing you that you're a hard worker, rather than saying I'm a hard worker. You know, and you know, if you're traveling from East Coast to West Coast, you know, 8 times a month and monitoring, I don't know, 5 or 6 studies, then, you know, that shows in itself that you are, you know, a hard worker. So you can show that without having to say I'm a hard worker. It's just another way of doing it.
Before we move on, Luce, do you mind if I cover Jerry's comment here?
Yeah.
It's just, this one is very relevant because I'm an agency to Jerry. I'm always very open and transparent with people I deal with. So I will normally tell them who I'm working with and ask them if they've applied there. I also, yes, it's useful for me to know where else people have applied so that I'm not doubling up. Because to answer your question, if, let's say you had applied to PPD, for example, because that was one of our examples, and you had been rejected, I would not be able to represent you for another position at PPD because your contact details, your information, your resume would all be sitting with PPD. And technically, if they found you suitable, that is where the ATS comes in for going back through to find whether you fit for the new position that you are applying for. As a recruiter, I wouldn't be able to put you forward because they already own your details. They're not going to be paying me 5 figures to make an introduction to somebody that they already know. And that is why, as a recruiter, we want to know where people have applied, and you know, recruiters probably should give you a heads up as to where you're applying and why it's also good to keep a track of where you're applying, because I've often had people who have said, oh, I've applied everywhere, so I don't know. And I'm kind of like, well, I tell you what, that's you decrease in value to me as an agency recruiter. Because I'm like, you could be amazing, but I could do loads of work, send your CV to my top clients, and then turn around and say, oh, actually, Jerry applied 6 months ago, but we're not paying you for that. Thanks very much. We've now filled that position. We no longer need you, James. So it ends up costing me an opportunity. I've not lost anything because I never had anything to lose, but I've definitely lost the opportunity to place that with someone. So again, that transparency should go back and forth.
And that's why as well, like just smashing the easy apply button to all of these opportunities as well. When you come to working with a recruiter, it may diminish the results you get, or even them wanting to work with you if you don't know where you've applied. As James just said, you know, he wouldn't get paid if you'd applied to a company that he was going to put you forward to. So make sure that you track your applications. Again, if you go to my bio, there is a tracker on there which you can download for free, so you can keep track of all of the applications that you've made. And also it helps you follow up, because don't just assume by just doing the application and waiting to hear something that's kind of it, because you need to, you know, if you want to be proactive and follow up, especially if it's an opportunity that you know you really, really want to hear back on. We'll come back to some of those questions in a second because they're racking up there, but let's just quickly look at this one. So this was a local trial manager with Icon. Now I looked at this and I thought, wow, well, they've covered the job, but then you get down to what you need to have, and it is so broad that it did leave me wondering, is this a genuine job, or is this fishing for resumes and just building their database? Because I mean, for such a large company to have such broad requirements, I mean, they must have been inundated with applications for that, because so many people would see themselves as fitting the bill, and arguably so many people would. Yeah. What are your thoughts, James?
looking at that, I can't believe they've put that out as a job advert. It's lazy. Like no wonder they can't get back to people, because again, how many people will have master's degrees or bachelor's degrees plus 5 years of directly related experience? Like, again, we've seen what people class as meeting 70 to 80% of the requirements.
Yeah, when they
would have been absolutely swamped. So for me, look, this is very, very lazy. It's a terrible advert or job description, whatever you want to call it, or it's phishing, and that's why they've gone so broad. They're just looking to harvest CVs that will go onto their database, and when something relevant comes up, they'll be able to search that, and that's where the ATS is used, people. It's to search and scan historic information on a database. It doesn't reject you in the first instance. Your CV is there. They will, let's say they need a study startup manager who's applied to that broad description. They can put in study startup into the ATS, and they'll pull up all their study startup managers. So ridiculously poor showing in terms of a job description, job advert, that one.
So let's just have a quick look, and then we'll close off with some questions. Hopefully you can see this one okay. So this, first off, I saw this come in, and it's a PDF. I always say don't send a PDF, because I just find them, you can't search them very well. I mean, I know, having spoken with you previously, James, you hate PDFs as well. Of course, as a recruiter, you normally redact the name and contact details off before sending them to your clients. So I guess, if someone's sending it in a PDF, it's making it a whole lot harder to do that.
I mean, it's an extra minute that it takes, because there's PDF converters these days. People can change it. Normally, as I said, I'm transparent. I tell people I'm going to put them forward. They know the company. But if I have to go and do extra work, it's just annoying. And if certain people will tell me, happy for you to represent me and put me forward for positions, just let me know once you've done it. If I've got 5 options and there's just one that's in Word format and it takes me 2 seconds to do it, I'll probably go with that one. Just because, all other things being equal, just for speed and convenience again. And it can just be a nightmare. Sometimes people don't format their CV as I'd like, and I normally redo it.
I always find as well, when you change it from PDF to Word, sometimes the formatting can completely go out of sync anyway. So avoid them. Now, just looking at this, so this resume, so she's got kind of objective. I would remove objective and put clinical trial manager next to her name at the top, rather than have that kind of objective, and then that way
a headline, I guess.
Headline, and then experience summary. Again, nothing wrong with that. She probably wants to build that out depending on the types of jobs she's applying for. Now, this one is an unusual one, where she's then listed the jobs that she's worked for here, and then gone on to kind of explain what she did in each job, but without having the job next to it. So, she's written as a CRA, as a clinical operations lead. I would list your experience, what you did under each job, next to each.
Boring is best.
Sorry?
I said boring is best. Coming out with weird and wonderful formats. I look at it and think, what's going on here?
No, it's not very clear. I mean, one good thing I would say she's got is if we scroll down here, she's got her therapeutic areas. I'd maybe move that closer to the top, just because, again, especially in clinical research, that is kind of crucial information. Education and everything else can stay at the bottom. But definitely that doesn't really work in terms of, just as a clinical operations lead, those responsibilities. You want them listed with the job, where you did them, etc. Because, again, you just covered it, Luce. I was going to say, it's all very good having a list of therapeutic experiences, but if we go up to the date, so this person has been working in research since 2011. Oh, 2011, sorry.
So it's like when did they work in each therapeutic area? Particularly at the moment, my clients will be focusing on, because they'll have, like if it's a CRO and they've got a particular client that wants, a biotech that is focused on oncology or CNS, they want that as the most recent experience. So don't just list it out what therapeutic areas you've worked in, intertwine it into each job as well, is what I know that you kind of advocate for that with your resume template.
Yeah, absolutely. And I noticed she's literally just mentioned the clinical operations lead position, and then her responsibilities as a CRA. So that just covers the two positions. Now, obviously, she has been a CRA for several years with different companies, and I get that. Most jobs roles are similar, but as James was just saying, you might have different therapeutic areas, different study, different variety of studies that you manage, things like that. So all that information is important, which is why you want to list each job next to the company you work for and the job description. But I'm going to stop sharing that now, and let's jump back over to the comments. So I noticed one up here was something about font size and font. I always recommend Arial 10, keep it boring, or Calibri. Calibri is quite a nice, easy to read one. Again, as I say, if you download my resume template and my bio, that will be all set out like that. Are company recruiters different than outside recruiters when it comes to applications? This is one for you, James.
100%. It's very, very different. So as an agency recruiter, I almost work like a job seeker to go out and source jobs that I can fill. So I'll have multiple clients working on multiple positions at one time. So I can normally either advise candidates which one may be best, may be most suitable, but there is a sense that I'm still working for those companies to find people for those jobs, rather than finding jobs for people, as I'm often approached where people say, James, can you help me find a job? I don't help people find jobs. I find people for jobs. The same goes with recruiters that are directly employed by employers. They're typically known as the talent acquisition team, and they just work solely on behalf of that one company. What you'll find is that they'll cover a range of different job roles. So they could, in clinical research, they could cover clinical operations, drug development, biostats, data management. And they're really more generalists. So when you apply and think, oh, I can't believe that someone couldn't see this, just imagine that, it's some young individuals that are straight out of graduate, they've recently graduated. They are literally sifting through resumes. They don't understand clinical research like you do, and therefore to expect them to understand the intricacies of what you've done or read between the lines, as Lucy said earlier, sometimes they don't even read the lines because they get bombarded. They're highly pressured to fill positions, and therefore, they are doing a box ticking exercise. So that's why you really do need to spell it out and make it so simple that a 6-year-old could read it in order to get through the door with the talent acquisition team. And I think that's the main difference. Is they're often more generalist, and they work solely for that company, so they're always going to say that their jobs are the best. An agency recruiter work for multiple companies and could have different options. So it's good to try and partner with a good agency recruiter who works in your space, but just be mindful that they will have their own niche, and you need to kind of research that. Otherwise, if you just go messaging agency recruiters, they'll be like, no, sorry, I'm not currently working on that. See you later, done, next. Like, we don't have time. And that's where often people get ghosted, because they feel like, why do I owe everyone a response when they've not bothered to look at my profile? It works kind of both ways. Like, we could get into the big debate about ghosting. I won't go there. But hopefully that answers that one.
Jasmine's got a question. What should be leery or what should be wary, I guess that should say, of young recruiters that just want our CVs with no call, etc.? It sometimes comes across as strange. I've been submitted for a large CRO position and was not told my CV was sent. It blocked another recruiter from submitting my information. What are
Yes,
your thoughts on that?
do be wary. If you think someone is, kind of young, sleazy, doesn't understand what they're doing, go and find another recruiter. It's that simple. Unfortunately, if they're the talent acquisition team at a certain employer, there's no way around that, and I'm sorry. But if it's agency side, go and find. There's plenty of us out there. You have to go and find those yourself. In terms of getting blocked by other recruiters, again, yes, it would block other recruiters because they have then sent your CV to that CRO. But if that CRO hasn't picked you up for that position or suitable positions, it's probably because they don't think that you suited. Because if your resume really was on point, believe me, they would be picking up the phone. And that's where, to an extent, comes back to, do you meet the requirements? Have you demonstrated it well enough in order to entice that individual at the other end to want to hear more?
Perfect. Thank you, Jasmine. You've been super engaged on this live, so I appreciate it. Rohan, are cover letters looked at?
Are you asking me, Luce, or?
I know what I think on this, and the answer is no. I mean, some industries may want them. I see them as a complete waste of time, personally. I mean, knowing when I worked as a recruiter, I know we never looked at cover letters, and I'm sure, James, you can vouch for that now. You still don't.
No, I mean, sometimes I've had some incredibly interesting ones where it's like a life story, and I've had pictures of people's holidays. Like, I mean, it was quite enjoyable to watch, but it didn't make me want to hire them. I can see we've got Mary McNamara in.
Yeah.
Love this question. Should I add that I can travel 60 to 80% in my summary?
I'll add that.
As a CRA, normally one of the biggest questions I get is, James, I need people that are happy to travel. Normally they would say 70 to 80%. So if you can do 60 to 80%, I would probably just put 70 to 80% because that's what they're all talking about. Mm-hmm. And then get yourself in the door and then kind of just say, look, ideally, I'd like it to be less, 60 to 80%. But, if the role's right, the company's right, got no problem traveling up to 80%. So, definitely worth adding in, along with those therapeutic areas, how much travel you've done, how many protocols you've juggled, how many sites you've juggled. All of these kind of general metrics as a CRA are worth highlighting. It may be boring and seem like you're, telling someone how to suck eggs, but these are questions that employers want to know. And most people just don't cover it because they think that the recruiter or the employer should assume that they've done that.
Well, as I said, I know Mary, and I know she's looking for CRA positions. While she hasn't worked specifically as a CRA, she has over 20 years of industry experience, and is now looking to kind of cross over into a CRO. I think she'd be a brilliant addition to the team. So if anyone's listening out there and needs a CRA with 20 plus years experience of industry experience, definitely reach out to Mary. I think last question here. If I'm returning to work after an international hiatus, should I address that on my resume? What's your thoughts in general? I mean, people take time out of work all the time in terms of, medical grounds or looking after family, taking a year out.
It depends on how long. I mean, if you've been traveling the outback for 10 years, people are going to see that and be like, what have you been doing for the last 10 years? You might just want to just put in, some people I see, if there's been a year break, they sometimes just put sabbatical. It's a difficult one to know or to advise on without more context. So, I'd have to be a sitter on the fencer with this and say it depends to an extent. Would need more context around that and what they mean. Because, sometimes yes, sometimes no.
Fair enough. Well, I guess other things to consider is, in terms of once your application has been made, what what's the next process for you, James? Once you've reviewed someone's resume, what are you doing straight after that? Picking up the phone or looking at, LinkedIn?
Always LinkedIn. I mean, I can normally decide in 2 seconds if someone's a no. If they're a potential yes, I keep reading for as long as it takes. It could be 5 minutes, it could be 10 minutes sometimes, just reviewing this. I'll then jump to someone's LinkedIn profile, double check that things marry up, because sometimes I see additional positions on people's LinkedIns that aren't on their resume. And I think, oh, what's going on here? I'll still pick up the phone, but it's kind of just, again, think of those scenarios where talent acquisition teams or recruiters in general want, have 500, 1,000 applicants. If there's any doubt, normally I say there's no doubt, just move on. Just find someone who does actually tick the boxes. That's what I'm paid to do. So that's what I do. So but the first thing is normally double check, cross-reference on LinkedIn, pick up the phone.
Okay. Autumn has joined us, and she's asked just quickly, what do you look for in your 6-second scan of a resume review?
Job title or headline. That's the number one thing. Like if I'm looking for a clinical research associate, I want to see that at the top of the page. It's like if I'm reading a newspaper, the headline pulls me in. I then look at the summary of experience. I'm kind of like, okay, headline or job title, tick. I'll read on. Experience summary. Okay, that looks good. I can normally decide then whether that person's going to be a fit. I then spend as long as it takes going through the requirements to be like, okay, have they used this system? No, but I can pick up the phone and ask them. Have they managed this many people? Doesn't say so, but I can pick up the phone and ask them. Would they be willing to, going back to Mary's question, would they be willing to travel 70 to 80%? Have they done it before? Can't see that on the resume. I'll pick up the phone and ask them. But all of those the less questions that I have, the quicker the process can be.
Definitely. And then, Mary-Ann, why do we need to have referrals at companies to get hired? Are you referring to references there or referrals in? I'm not quite sure what she means. Obviously, if someone's referring, a lot of companies offer referral schemes. So quite often, if someone in a similar type position you might be applying for might have it advertised on their LinkedIn that they're hiring. And I would definitely say, reach out to them. If they can refer you in, you'll probably stand a better chance of getting in rather than, joining the hundreds of talent pool with, hundreds of applicants. So any avenue in, take it, is what I would say, if that's what you were referring for. I think we've got time for one.
I'll cover a couple of quick ones here, Lewis, because I can been reading as you were talking there.
Okay.
So one from Maggie saying that I'm 61, 25 years of experience in CRO. Should I be concerned that ageism is a problem? But it can be. I won't beat around the bush and tell you that it doesn't happen. It does. Actionable ways to avoid this is, you're not obliged to put on your date of birth onto your resume. If you've got 25 plus years, again, I normally at a certain point I just say put 20 plus, because that's more than enough to do it. But eventually you will find someone who values experience. And me, for example, I've placed people who are as old as 7 in the past and had no problem whatsoever. They were beyond retirement age and the person saw the value in them. Another one here is from Autumn about the 2-page rule. There's generally no rule. However it needs to be, your resume, to convey what you've done, is good with me. I don't care whether it's 2 pages, 3 pages, 4 pages, 5 pages. Starts going beyond that, I kind of think, surely you should be able to cut this down. 1 page for me is never enough. I just look at it and immediately I'm like, they haven't done anything.
Unless if you've got a consistent career in one industry, then the kind of full version. Obviously, if you've chopped and changed from industries and 10 years, 20 years ago isn't no longer relevant, then maybe an abridged version. But I'm conscious that we're running out of time. So Strong resume, it really does make all the difference. So jump onto my bio after this, download my free resume template. There's also a tracker on there that you can use to track your positions that you're applying for. And yeah, if you want to know more about my Career Growth Accelerator program, feel free to drop me a DM. And if there's anything that you would like maybe me to do a live on again, or maybe we can get James on to answer from a recruiter's point of view, again, drop me a DM. I'd love to know. This is the first live that I've done back since, I think the last one I did was last year sometime. So if you enjoyed this, I'd be happy to do more. But you can also check out my YouTube channel, which is Huxley Morton. Again, link in the bio, where I do weekly videos on all sorts of things, from writing out your resume, interview questions, interview technique, etc. But thank you for joining us today. And for those who joined late or have missed this, it will be live on LinkedIn, so you can watch it back whenever you feel needs be. And I'll also pop it on my YouTube channel. But thanks again, and thank you, James, for your time. And yeah, we will hopefully see you all again soon.